全是隔离的。都隔离的哈，这人真那么多呀！
不过是大梦一场空，不过是无影照惊鸿，不过是白驹之过一场梦。
共同的敌人，可能在任何时间，在世界任何地方出现。中国同其他国家一样，都受到了病毒的攻击，是受害者，不是加害者，更不是病毒的同谋。面对重大的公共卫生危机和传染病的威胁，国际社会应当团结协作，同舟共济，而不是相互指责，甚至叫嚣什么追责索赔。我不记得国际上有过类似的做法。2009年 H1N1 流感在美国大面积爆发，并蔓延到214个国家和地区，导致近20万人死亡。有谁让美国赔偿了吗？上个世纪80年代，艾滋病首先在美国发现，并且蔓延至全世界，不知道给世界上多少人造成痛苦。有谁找美国追责了吗？
目前小麦调锈病已在9个省发生了1300多万，是近10年来发生程度最重的一年。刚才气象部门也介绍了，4、5月份江淮、黄淮可能雨水偏多，也可能会造成小麦赤霉病的一个大流行。小麦白粉病现在也在不同程度的发生，夺取今年的夏粮和全年丰收，防病治虫的任务十分繁重。
今年是咋回事嘛？自我没抱怨一些。今年这粮食也不行了，你看，全部都得病了。
我的天哪！
看看这大雪，这4月20号，2020年4月20号，这也不知道啥年头。我问我妈，70岁人了都没赶上过这样式的大雪。
福建官媒4月14号发文称，福建省2020年高校毕业生3支1扶计划实施方案已经出台，明确2020年招募约600名高校毕业生，安排到乡镇从事支教、支农、支医和扶贫工作，服务期间为2年，期满后自主结业。大陆民众魏女士说，3支1扶计划就是解决应届毕业生的就业问题。
吃的多了，他就把这些人推向那个农村来。
说大学毕业生下乡、农民工回乡的试点项目已经在贵州铜仁展开了。也有网友跟帖质疑，上一次是先文革后下乡，这次难道是先下乡再文革吗？福建庄先生说，疫情下企业没有订单，就业成问题。当局启动新一轮的上山下乡运动，既可解决大学生的就业问题，又可解决因失业引发的社会问题。
这样的政策是一个倒退，就到那个就上山下乡那种年代，我们这代人还是知道一些的。那整个就是， 福来嘛。那现在这个社会还发展到这个状况的话，显然我们是觉得问题还是非常多的。
中共官媒4月19号称，疫情重创就业，大约8000万人未复工，其中70%以上是农民工。有海外学者分析，中国实际上大约有2亿人正面临失业风险，包括870万应届大学生。
死了一个。这个谁一个小明星呢？我这个我都没有可能是吧？
Heavily armed, piled in the back of an old military vehicle and calling for freedom. Shoulder to shoulder, ignoring public health orders and medical advice. And after insisting the country is ready to start reopening, the president announced via Twitter he's suspending immigration temporarily in light of the attack from the invisible enemy, as well as the need to protect the jobs of our great American citizens.
Kim Jong-un 10 days ago, the dictator running his ruling party's committee meeting on coronavirus, broadcast on state TV. He had heart surgery the next day. 3 days later, April 15, North Korea's most important holiday, celebrating his late grandfather, and Kim Jong-un was a no-show. Now, American media is reporting Kim Jong-un is in grave danger. One report even saying he's brain dead. South Korea says it has no proof these latest claims about Kim Jong-un are accurate.
Australia's Foreign Minister Maurice Payne has called for an investigation into China's management of COVID-19, where the virus was first reported. On Monday, during a video conference with Russian officials, Russia's President Vladimir Putin said that Russia has managed to curb the COVID-19 crisis, but the peak of the virus is still ahead. South Koreans have started returning to work after the country eased some of its social distancing rules after seeing a downward trend of COVID-19 cases. However, many companies are still continuing to apply flexible working hours and limiting travel and face-to-face meetings.
Well, in the USA, the price of oil has collapsed to a record low as demand dries up and storage runs out. The price of a barrel of West Texas Intermediate, which is the benchmark for US oil, today traded as low as minus $40 a barrel. It's the first time the price has turned negative in history.
New Zealand is held up as an example of a country that's got it right so far. An extreme lockdown was introduced rapidly, and cases and deaths have been kept unusually low. So the Prime Minister has announced the first cautious moves to open up.
To me, the most revealing and dastardly evil thing that the Chinese government did, they saw how bad Wuhan province was. So they cut all travel to and from Wuhan from within China, but they let the planes go out internationally. How nice of them.
Exactly. 5 million people left Wuhan. They allowed this virus to spread. They knew it would spread. They spread false talking points like, it won't spread from human-to-human contact. They didn't let scientists in to investigate. They actually disappeared doctors who tried to blow the whistle. The number of deaths and infections they hid. When we dropped this bill last Friday, that was the same day that the Chinese government said, we underestimated by about 50% the number of deaths. They didn't underestimate. They knew. This is China. They'd keep track of every single person in Wuhan. Of course they knew. So now that we know how they have wronged us, Americans are going to do what Americans do when we feel an injustice is leveled against us. We're going to find somebody to sue. And so, go ahead.
Well, okay, it's true. But I'll tell you what, we also have something else. They have a lot of our debt. This is costing this country, Senator Cotton, a fortune. I'd say they ought to forgive that debt as it relates to the cost of all of their mess that they caused.
Yeah, Sean, you and Dan had some good points there about the evil intent of Chinese leaders, intentionally allowing this virus to get outside their border. You also mentioned the hoarding of personal protective equipment and now trying to profiteer off of it, or even sending Chinese drones to America to collect information and send it back. China has to pay for all of this. One way to pay is the lawsuit that Dan, or the law that Dan and I would have introduced, would be to allow American courts to hear cases against China's leaders. Another one would be consider all that debt that China currently holds, given the fact that we're going to have to deficit finance so much of the money that we're spending to help float our businesses and help our distressed families.
Why can't we get
We
this?
also consider things like sanctions against Chinese officials.
So obviously there's a big push to find out what China knew and why we still don't know everything about it. The president's saying we need to get in there and look around and find out where this all started, whether it was a Wuhan lab or whether it was actually in a wet market, which mysteriously has reopened. When the president complimented the president of China early, was it because he was under the illusion that he was getting all accurate and full and the full story about this virus? And does he regret those compliments that he threw at President Xi?
No, look, the president's always very complimentary in his dealings with foreign leaders. If the American people could be on the phone calls that he has with our adversaries and our friends, he's a real gentleman. He was the same way with President Xi, but he's been clear from the outset, we need to get the CDC into China. There's really a huge burden on China to tell us where this came from. Did it come from a lab? Did it come from a wet market? Neither of those are good answers, right? I mean, these wet markets are
but Robert, it's
a host of, have hosted plagues.
Robert, don't you believe it? It's not something that they're obligated to do it, and they still haven't done it. And I'm just wondering, when are we going to get punitive with them, and why we just continue to put the analyst hat on, and we don't get more aggressive with them to come clean once and for all?
Well, I think we're being pretty tough on China. And look, there are lawsuits that have been filed by folks out there. Some countries are looking at how to deal with China going forward. We certainly are. But remember, this is the fourth or fifth plague that's come out of China since 2000. We've had the avian flu, we had SARS, we had H1N1. And so whether these are coming out of labs that have sloppy procedures, whether they're coming out of the wet markets that are really horrific, if you watch some of those things, we've got to stop this. I mean, we got to stop the export of these viruses from China. We're going to make our position, and we have made our position on these issues very clear to the Chinese. I think it's becoming a worldwide call now that China has to come forward with the information. I mean, if you take a look at how they've handled the virus, with whistleblowers disappearing and newsmen and women from the Wall Street Journal and New York Times being kicked out of the country, and you contrast that to how Taiwan or Singapore or other countries have handled this, there's just a real big disparity there, and we've got to get to the bottom of what happened.
Yeah, Ambassador, how do we do that? How do we hold China accountable when they're covering things up? They're getting rid of the whistleblowers. You know, we're not going to ever be able to get in that lab. They're not going to let us in there to find out what happened if it really did start there. How do you do this? How do you investigate China?
Well, we have a lot of tools in our toolkit, but one of the things I know, I think there are Americans that are, I understand there are lawsuits that are being filed here against China.
Yeah, class action.
We'll see how it all plays out. But with some of these trial lawyers, they're pretty dogged, and the Chinese have a lot of assets around the world. We'll see what happens. But right now, what we're doing is calling on the Chinese to cooperate, and we want to get along with China. We have a trade deal. We'd like to get along with China, but China needs to behave in a fashion that makes them a responsible player in the world. And unfortunately, with the outset of this virus, it wasn't great, and they've got to fix that.
The reason he's president of the United States is the managed decline of the country by our Wall Street, our corporate, our cultural, our think tank elite that had this theory. It was called Thucydides' trap. This is Henry Kissinger and Graham Allison at Harvard. Okay, the same scam they ran back in the 70s about the Soviet Union. We're the declining power. It goes back to ancient Greece, Athens and Sparta, the rising power and the declining power, right? And we're the declining power. And the way the declining power is supposed to do it, and to avoid a large global conflict, is to basically, essentially kowtow, but to get your way by gently nudging them to kind of follow along and become a part of your order. And that way you'll be the junior partner, but the junior partner will actually control the situation. It's it's dangerous. It was dangerous in the 70s. A guy that came out and blew that up was a guy named Ronald Reagan. He goes, hey, how about this one? We win, they lose, right? They're an evil empire. He called them out. In the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. And that was Ronald Reagan. Or as PG, the French infantry officer, poet, Catholic socialist poet, died in the trenches of Verdun. He said, the most important thing is not to report what you see, but to see what you see. This is the difference in the signal and the noise. The American people, hey, guess what? The Pew poll, they're woke, okay? This is woke America. And as Sam Houston told the guys down in Texas before the Civil War, when the United States decides to do something, when you anger them, they get it done. Do not anger those guys, because once they get up on it, they get up on it.
You know, there's another point here. I mean, we so often think of the left as being the scooter riding soy boys, you know, crying into their I don't even know what they drink. Everything's a endangered species at this point. But there's another line in here with both the U.S. and Chinese economies reeling from the pandemic. The poll found that Americans recognize that the U.S. is the world's leading economic power and the world's leading military power. A significant majority, 91%, believe the world is better off with American rather than Chinese leadership. Here's the thing: it doesn't make the connect, though. Do people realize that we're right at the tip here of that no longer being the case?
I think they're going to become. I think because in their daily lives, I think it's going to hit upon them. Right. This is the Cuban America 1.0 and 2.0.
他们来收拾完蛋了啊，彻底完蛋了。然后呢，整个美国现在非常清楚，现在是共产党想转移真相，说这个整个病毒呢是武汉实验室的，是一个疫苗，然后是易入械外啊，易入械外。那么好就是孙立军干的啊，有可能，有可能啊，把孙立军干，那不就我们说的情报太准了吗？然后达到目的嘛，是吧？转移视线嘛，找几个牺牲品嘛。我们在1月份已经说了，但是我告诉大家，美国人没那么傻，欧洲也没那么傻，反应的慢，绝对不等于反应傻。所以说，共产党6月4号，战友们，我现在所有想的都是没有共产党的日子啊，我压根儿不想共产党还会在中国待着。有些人说6月4号怎么样？你不相信6月4号，你不要相信。你在6月4号以前过，或者你自己绕开6月4号过。灭共不是我们的责任。6月4号必须灭共，不是我要表演给你看的。就像昨天我战友直播，我要证明给我身边人看，我的是对的。我昨天可能你绝对不要这么说。当你干任何事情要证明给别人的时候，你已经是输家了。你为什么你的生命活着要证明给别人看？你要等待别人的评价，你才满意呢？因为你没有你自己，你没有自己。我做这件事情不是为了什么任何人，我也不是为了杨改兰，我也不是为了今天在镜头前战友，我首先是为了我自己，我的理想，我的信仰。没有任何人我都会坚定的灭共，今天灭不了，我明天灭，明天后天灭，后年不行，我大后年灭，我这一辈子就灭共。6月4号灭共是我的目标，那不是我的责任，那不是我欠谁的，我一定要给你兑现。今天嘎嘣儿啊，这个共产党死了，我都不会说这是我干的，我绝对不会的。共产党被灭是战友们的力量，是上天的力量，是他自己主宰。